What is up, Fresh Life students? Pastor Jeremy here. Sorry that we got logged in a little bit late. I hope you guys are tuning in. I'm going to give you a moment to just kind of get logged in. First and foremost, we're just going to talk about some announcements, some different things that we have going on. We're spamming Instagram, we're spamming Facebook, we're spamming everywhere to try and get the information to you guys. I'm sending you text messages, all this different stuff, okay? So as you're getting logged in, just kind of be thinking about the things that we're doing over the next few weeks. We have our I'm All In challenge, okay? I'm All In contest, which is going all the way into the end of May. Some of you may or may not have heard about it by now. We've tried to get the information out to all of our students. I'm All In contest, okay? So basically, which student is going to be all in until the end of May? Till May 31st, which is a Sunday. We're tallying up points. We're seeing who is involved, who's commenting, who wants to lead devotions, who is hopping on the Bible app and doing those types of things with us, commenting, all these different types of things. And so I just want to give a shout out to Peyton Bishop, which is Sierra's little sister. She lives in Missouri, but she's been hanging out with us. She's been hopping on and doing different things with us. We have the meme contest. We have all these different things, but she actually submitted a meme for this past week, and her meme was actually the funniest, and so she's getting points. We have people from all over that are hopping on and joining us, so it doesn't matter where you're at. Obviously, we love our Fresh Life youth. We love everybody that is in our church, but during this time that we're online, any students, high school, middle school, you're welcome to hop on and see what we have going on. And so I encourage you, if you're watching, if you're not a part of this church, continue to stay in the loop on everything. We want to get to know you. We want to love on you the best that we can. But Zoom last night was awesome. For those of you that hopped on, we had a blast. I think we had about 5 or 6 students who hopped on, and we just hung out. We just laughed. We just cut up. So it was good to see all of your faces. I know you get to see me every week on Wednesdays and Sundays, but I don't get to see you. Unless I come to your house, I don't get to see you. And so it's nice to be able to kind of jump in and see everybody. And so that was nice. There was some faces that I saw this time that I didn't see on our last Zoom call, which was awesome. But also, just a few things. Jumping into this Sunday, we're going to be doing a challenge every Sunday. So we're going to kind of incorporate that into our live stream. Basically, if you have a challenge that you would like to see me do on video, whether it's 50 push-ups or whatever in a certain amount of time, eating a hot pepper, whatever it is, something that you would like to see me do within reason. If we see it, we like it, we think we can do it, we'll throw it up. Not literally throw up. We'll throw it up on the live feed, and we'll see how that goes. And so jumping into our message tonight, our sermon series for the month of April is Weather the Storm. And so for the past 2 weeks, we've talked about weathering the storm of fear versus faith, weathering the storm of temptation. And so tonight we're going to jump into a little bit different, but I was thinking about storms. I was thinking about rain. I was thinking about snow. I was thinking about hurricanes. I was thinking about all these different types of storms that people face in different areas of the world. And so, obviously, growing up in Georgia, we didn't really have too many tornadoes. Obviously, you'd hear about a tornado every now and then, but you don't really hear about tornadoes too much. Mostly, we get floods. We might have some hurricane rain that's coming in from Florida or something like that. But nothing too serious. But I remember a few years ago, some of you might have been really young, you may not remember, but there was a snowstorm that hit the metro Atlanta area, and they called it Snowmageddon. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it just so happened that I was in college, but it just so happened that my dad was on his way home from work when the snowstorm hit. And he actually had to spend the night on the interstate in his truck because traffic was that bad. And so the storm literally came out of nowhere. Nobody was prepared for it. It just happened. It came and it happened, and it affected a lot of people in a detrimental way. And that's how storms work. That's how storms come up on our life. As much technology as we have, as much as we like to think that we're prepared, more often than not, we're not prepared for the storm. Another instance that I have specifically, I used to work in Oklahoma at a place called Teen Challenge. For those of you who don't know what that is, I'm just going to say, long story short, it's a boarding school that students go to for an extended period. But I was on shift one night, and in Oklahoma, we actually do have a problem with tornadoes. It was springtime. All the students were getting in the bed. Everything is kind of winding down. And then the director of the program texts me, and she says, you need to get the students next door to the basement ASAP. And so I'm like wigging out. I'm running around trying to get 20 boys up out of the bed who just got into the bed. Everybody's scrambling to put on tennis shoes and get out the door. And when you walk outside, there's literally, if you've ever seen the rain blow sideways, the rain was blowing sideways, and it was about a 50-yard sprint to the staff member's house who had a basement next door. And so there was actually kind of a hill to get down to the staff member's house. And so there's 20 boys that are just running full speed. And a lot of them are like scared. A lot of them are like laughing. It was crazy. But we had students that were sliding. It looked like a huge slip and slide. Not intentionally though, but it was crazy. And so the storms of life, when they come, when they happen, sometimes you just can't prepare for it. Sometimes it's just going to come out of nowhere and it's going to hit you. And so it's like, what do you do in those situations? My dad, whenever he was on the interstate, he literally had to crank up his truck to get heat because he spent the night in his truck, and then he would have to turn his truck off and save gas. It was crazy. But tonight we're going to talk about something in a little bit different of a way when it comes to the storms. The storm of our mind. And many of you have read books, seen books, heard different stories about the storm within your mind, the battlefield of the mind. Your mind is a very intense place. But tonight we're going to dig into it in a way that kind of talks about your mind in relationship to doubt. And I know we might not think that that's a huge deal. We might not think that that's a big deal, but doubt is powerful. If we believe that faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain, what couldn't doubt of the equal size do in our life if we let that seed grow? And so, doubt is your worst enemy. Doubt is absolutely your worst enemy. But tonight we're going to talk about a man in the Bible who saw some pretty amazing things. He followed God. He walked with God. He saw some things that you and I have probably... I know you have never seen anything like this before. He's experienced highs, he's experienced lows, but he came to a point in his life where he doubted. He doubted what was going on. He doubted the entire situation. But that man happens to be Elijah, and he faced a pivotal point in his life where things were going really well, and then in a moment's notice, things were going really bad. And he contemplated some things. And so tonight, if you have your Bible, I'm just going to summarize 1 Kings 18. But as I'm doing that, I want you to open up your Bible. I want you to physically grab your Bible, go to 1 Kings chapter 19, and then we're going to follow. You'll just follow along as I read. But basically, Elijah was a prophet. He goes to the king of Judah at the time, who was Ahab. And he basically says, dude, like, what's going on with you? Like, you've got you're worshiping all these false gods. Everything's going wrong. Then Ahab just looks at him and he's like, dude, like, you're a troublemaker. Get out of here. And Elijah's like, you're the troublemaker. You're the one that is worshiping all these awful gods. You're not worshiping the one true God. And Elijah's like, we're going to settle this. I want you to bring all your guys, all the prophets of Baal. I want you to bring all of them out to Mount Carmel, and we're going to have a little duel, if you'll say. And so Elijah says, you get your guys to build an altar, slay a bull, do the full deal, but don't set it on fire. I want you to see if your God will come down, and I want you to see if your God will consume the sacrifice. And so they do everything. They're getting everything built up, and then nothing happens. So absolutely nothing happens at all. And Elijah's kind of making fun of them at this point, and he's basically like calling them out, like, where's your God? And so then it's Elijah's turn. So Elijah's kind of taunting them at this point, and he says, all right, I'm going to do my thing. And he basically builds an altar, slays a bull, everything, the whole 9 yards, but he goes as far as to pour water on it, basically taunting the enemy, saying, my God is not only going to consume this, but he is going to consume it soaking wet. And he does. He takes a step back. He says, all right, God, do your thing. God comes down, and it's insane. It's crazy. Literally, fire from heaven consumes the altar, consumes the sacrifice. And so then, long story short, he decides, I'm going to go and kill all these prophets, all these false prophets. But then Ahab, the king's wife, finds out about it, and then that's where the story starts going south. So everything seems to be going good for Elijah. He is showing that God is the one true God, but then he finds out that Jezebel wants his head. He finds out that Jezebel wants him dead, and then that's when he starts to kind of cower away, and it's just kind of funny. That is the pivotal point when he starts to doubt. So we'll read 1 Kings chapter 19. That was chapter 18, really quickly. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. So Ahab goes to his wife, and he's like, Elijah just did something really crazy. He told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. So basically, she says, by this time tomorrow, I want you dead. And Elijah, what does he do? Verse 4, it says, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a tree. And he asked that he might die. He said, it is enough now, O Lord, take my life, for I'm no better than my father's. So all this is going on, and then one woman wants him dead, and he runs and says, God, just take my life. I can't do this. Lord, just take my life. I can't do this. And so he's continuing to run into the wilderness. An angel comes to him, actually feeds him, and tells him to keep going, to keep running. It's crazy. He actually runs 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Horeb, to Mount Sinai, to meet God. And so what does God say? I'll summarize. What does God say when he gets there? It's funny to me. But what God says to Elijah after he flees, after he's running from Jezebel, 40 days, 40 nights, he gets all the way to this mountain, and God says, Elijah, what are you doing here? He looks at him and says, or he speaks to him and says, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And I think that's so crazy because there's so much power in what he did and what he went through and the doubt that he was facing, the fear that he was facing. But God still meets him in that place, and God's still patient with him in that place, and the presence of God still meets him in that place. In fact, as he's hiding in a cave, there's an earthquake, there's fire, there's a great wind, but God was in none of those. God was in the still small voice. And so during that time, God's asking him, he's like, Elijah, why are you here? And Elijah he's in turmoil. He says, I'm the only one left that's worshiping you, God. I'm the only one left that's worshiping you. If I die, none of this works out. If I die, then how does your word go forth is basically what he's saying. And God speaks to him and says, I have 7,000 that I have preserved that have never worshiped a false god. He's basically saying, like, you've doubted me in this entire situation, and you thought that it was you that was actually the big deal, but it's me. And so basically, God was telling him the whole time, I've got this. Why have you doubted me? Why have you doubted me? And so one of the first points that I want to make tonight is that doubt causes us to take matters into our own hands. Doubt causes us to take matters into our own hands. Whenever God says, stay still, be still and know that I am God, whenever he said that to you in your life, whenever things start to get quiet for a little while, whenever things start to not make sense for a little while, whenever the storms of life begin to rage and you begin to look around in your life, when he says, be still and know that I'm God, it's when we start to take things into our own hands. That's when the doubt creeps in. And so I challenge you tonight, students, whenever you get to this place where you're like, well, God's never intervened for me. God's not going to intervene for me. We have to remain steadfast. We have to overcome. We have to conquer that battlefield in our mind. And so we have to continue to see God's goodness through the trial. I can't say that I know what it's like to have someone seek after my life to kill me. I can't say that I know what that's like, but when God gives you a task, when he gives you something to do, He's going to provide the protection. He's going to provide everything that needs to go forth. Everything was fine up until Jezebel said, I want your head. And then that's when he starts to freak out. There was 850 prophets that were there the day the fire came down and consumed the altar. And he wasn't scared of a single one of them, but he was scared of Jezebel. And so I don't know how the story would have played out had he remained steadfast and not been scared. I don't know. But God's faithful. And so tonight you may have found yourself swarmed with doubt. You may find yourself like Elijah, 40 days gone into the wilderness. God, I don't know what's happened the past 40 days, but I have doubted you. I've doubted myself. I've doubted everything. But God was faithful in that place, and he spoke to him. He was patient. He had that still small voice. My next point is doubt brings more defeats than failure ever will. Doubt brings more defeat than failure ever will. And what I mean by that is doubt will keep you from shooting that shot. Doubt will keep you from taking that leap of faith. Say you shoot the shot and miss. Who cares? Say you shoot the shot and make the shot. Doubt will keep you from even taking that step to begin with. Proverbs 24:16 says this, the godly man may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. The godly man trips 7 times, but they get back up again. It's not how many times you fail, students. It's not how many times that you trip up, but it's how many times that you get back up. It's how many times that you get back up. And so God isn't asking for you not to get knocked down. Elijah got knocked down. Many of us have been knocked down in our life, but he's asking us to get back up. To get back up. Doubt takes away your fight, your drive, your purpose, your reason for living. Doubt would have kept the Wright brothers from flying the first plane. Doubt would have kept Thomas Edison from inventing the light bulb. Doubt would have kept Michael Jordan from being arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. And although this wasn't his quote, he made famous the saying, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. You miss 100% of the shots that you never take. And what's holding you back? Fear and doubt because you don't believe that you'll make it. But like I said a second ago, doubt will defeat you way more than failure ever will. One last thing about the quote, you miss 100% of the shots that you never take. Something that a lot of people don't realize about Michael Jordan is actually that he actually missed more shots than he ever made. The greatest basketball player, arguably of all time, missed more shots than he ever made. But the shots that he made mattered. Let's say he would have doubted himself and never took those shots. How different of a player he would be. It says the righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. He didn't let those missed shots determine whether or not he was going to take another shot. And so Henry Ford, the inventor of the assembly line, the one that went on to perfect the Model T, the combustion engine, to push cars out into mass production. He said this right here. It's one of my favorite quotes. He says, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're exactly right. And what does that mean? Basically, if you think you can do something, if you believe you can do something, if you have faith that you can do something, students, then you can do it. But if you don't believe you can do something, if you're doubting that you can do something, then you won't be able to do it 100% of the time. And so I just think that's so powerful. We have to change our perspective. We have to change our mind. Funny story, when I was in high school, I was a junior, I wrestled. It was my first year wrestling. I loved it, I had a blast, but I was stubborn. My coaches kept telling me, Jeremy, you need to drop weight, you need to drop weight. I'm naturally about 155, and I was wrestling 152, but my coaches were like, Jeremy, you need to cut about 10 pounds. You need to cut about 10 pounds. You need to be wrestling a lot lower, but I didn't do it. And so this was actually towards the end of the year. This was my last wrestling match of the season. And it didn't have to be, but it was because of me. And so I didn't heed the advice of my coaches. And when I stepped on the mat that day, before I even shook the hand of my opponent, I knew I was already defeated. And why? Because I didn't heed the advice of my coaches. Because the guy that I was wrestling looked like he weighed about 170 naturally, and he had cut about 18 pounds down to 152. And I was looking at him like David and Goliath, but David didn't have the fear that I had. David didn't have the doubt that I had. I knew I was defeated. And that was the night that I actually dislocated my elbow. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. And I've never wrestled another day. I didn't wrestle my senior year. I didn't wrestle after that. And so I don't know, I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but in that moment, doubt held me back. In that moment, doubt, I stood on the mat and I knew I was defeated in that moment. And it was because I doubted. And so when we believe that we can do something, if we set our minds to it, it's daily. It's daily. I can't walk up to a mountain if I've never walked in such a way with my faith, if I've never walked in such a way where I've exercised my faith, if I've never pulled out my mustard seed, if I've never planted my seed, if I've never watered that seed, then that mustard seed doesn't mean very much. And so in that moment when I was wrestling, faith didn't mean a whole lot in that moment because I hadn't previously prepared. I hadn't previously walked in it. And so we have to continue to walk in such a way that daily we push doubt out of our minds. Daily we say, I'm not going to fear. Daily we say, Lord, I know that this is difficult. I know that this is tough, but I know this is what you've called me to. And I know this doesn't make sense. I know this isn't easy, but God, this is what you want from me. And so my final point tonight is this. Let your story be a comeback story. Let your story be a comeback story. Whenever Elijah was in the wilderness, and God said, go back the way that you came. What are you doing here? I still have more for you. Go back from where you came from. He could have said, Lord, I'm done. I'm not doing it. How many of us, whenever we get to that place, we feel like we're too far gone. We feel like we have no more purpose. Doubt has crept in. But God's saying, go back the way that you came. I have more for you. I have more planned for you. And so let your story be a comeback story. And the final thing that I want to say tonight is this. I was watching the Olympics about 3 years ago, and it was the Winter Olympics. There was cross-country skiing, so there was about 15 or 16 skiers lined up. They all had their skis, they all had their poles, they were lined up, they were ready to go, and then the gunshot goes off, and they're going. And so they all kind of get jumbled up in this pack. They all kind of get tangled up. And then this one particular person, because everybody's trying to gain the lead, this one particular person trips and falls back. He falls back behind everybody else. He's easily 10 seconds behind the last person. And it was Sunday after church, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm watching, and I'm slowly noticing this guy is not giving up. The cameramen are focusing more on the guy in the very back than they're focusing on the guys in the lead. It's because this guy, literally, he is moving faster than anybody else out there. The guy in the very back, when you get knocked down, what is your first reaction, students? Your reaction is to think, well, this is over with now. Your first reaction is to think that I cannot believe I spent how many years getting to this stage, getting to the Olympics, and it's over with. But that man, literally, I watched him with my own eyes. He begins to pass one person. He begins to pass another person. He begins to pass another person. He begins to pass another person. And you might be thinking there's no way that he would actually get to the beginning and win the race. I think there was 10 or so laps. I'm not exactly sure. But I began to watch him pass person after person after person. This was the greatest comeback I have ever seen on live television. And the margin by which he was losing, at least 10 seconds, it was unreal. I promise that's the margin that he won the race by. It wasn't by a hair. He didn't come crashing in and barely beat the person who was in first place. He won the race by the margin that he was losing by. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And you got to think, the people in the Olympics, it's not kids in high school that might get a shot. These are the best of the best. And so every position that you take is earned. And so the fact that he was losing and got all the way back to the beginning says a lot about who he was as a person. And so I don't know if he was a believer, but in that moment I was thinking, God, if that was me in that situation, you and I in those situations in life, when the storms of life rage, when everything's crashing down, when everything's going wrong, what is our mindset? Is our mindset to say, God, why have you allowed this to happen? God, I worked so hard for this moment. God, I worked so hard for this. Why have you allowed this to happen? And I believe that many times God allows those things to happen to show himself through us. To show himself through us. What a testimony of getting knocked down, being in the very back of the pack, and then striving all the way to the front. What a testimony. And so what a testimony in our lives whenever we can joy in tribulation, when things are going wrong, when everything, when the whole world is crashing down upon us, students, and we can put a smile on our face and say, I'm going to push through this. When we can put a smile on our face and say, I know without a shadow of a doubt that I'm going to win this race. When Elijah, though he got knocked down, though everything in his life was going wrong, God said, go back the way that you came. Keep pushing. Keep going through. And so I don't know, students, who that is tonight. I don't know who's watching this. I don't know what you're facing. A lot of things are going on in our world. Coronavirus. Students, you're out of school. Students, you might be overwhelmed with schoolwork. There might be a lot of dreams and things that you had planned for that aren't going the way that you expected. But I encourage you tonight to be intentional about the thoughts that come into your mind. Be intentional about the things that come into your head. The Bible says take every thought captive. Every single thought captive. When I was on that wrestling match, when I was on the mat, I wasn't taking any of my thoughts captive. My thoughts were taking me captive. I stood on the mat and I looked at the guy and I literally was like, yep, I'm done. I'm done. And that's not to say that if my mindset had changed that it would have been any different, but doubt keeps you down. Failure knocks you down, but doubt will keep you down. And so Elijah got knocked down emotionally. He didn't understand. Everything's going wrong. And so tonight, if you've been knocked down, that doesn't mean that you have to stay down. Let faith rise. So what is it that you're facing? What is it that you're going through? Today's April 15th. Today's April 15th. You've got school to finish. You've got things going on. You've got the next week ahead of you. What is the goal? What is your purpose? What is it that God's laying on your heart? What is it that you've tried at and failed and you said, I'm done? Pick it back up. God says, go back the way that you came. And so tonight as I pray, I'm just going to encourage you students just to dive in deeper, just to go in a little bit harder. Go back the way that you came. To be a believer in I can and not a believer in I can't. Because if you believe I can't, then you can't. But if you believe you can, I promise you can. Father, I pray right now, Lord, for every student watching. Father, I pray that you would just be the lifter of spirits right now. God, I pray that you would just supernaturally speak to them. Go back the way that you came. I know that you may have fallen short. I know that you may have failed. I know that you may have doubted. I know that things may not have gone the way that you planned, but don't stay down. Get back up. I know that you may have shot and missed. I know that you may have taken that leap of faith and you might have started to sink like Peter. I know. But don't let doubt keep you there. Take those steps of faith to keep pushing, to keep growing. Some of the greatest people, some of the greatest athletes, some of the greatest inventors of this lifetime failed and failed and failed and failed and failed, but they didn't stay down. And Father, I pray for the students tonight, God, who feel like they're failing. God, I pray that they would keep getting back up. Though a righteous man falls 7 times, he gets up every single time. And Father, I pray for these students right now. I pray that you'd be the lifter of their spirits, their hearts. God, when their school year and everything's going haywire, Father, I pray that they would just keep getting back up in you, keep going forward, keep moving. And Father, we love you, we thank you, we praise you in Jesus' name. Students, we love you so much. We look forward to hanging out with you more. Zoom, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere that we can hang out with you. Keep submitting challenges. Keep commenting. Keep posting. Keep texting me and my wife. We want to connect with you. And so tonight is one night. Tonight's big. Tonight's huge. Sunday night's big. Sunday night's huge. But all throughout the week, keep connecting with us. If you have anything that you want to pray about, text my wife. Text me. This isn't, we're not islands, okay? We don't have to do this on our own. We have the technology, we have the ability, we have all these avenues to connect with you. And so if while we were in services, if you were too timid to come talk to me or my wife, take advantage of this opportunity. We love you so much. We want to get to know you more. Keep staying focused, and we love you so much.